We must defeat Comrade Kamala Harris. I use that term because you know what that term means, right? Communist. She's a Marxist, communist, fascist, socialist. She's not actually a socialist. She's gone past that. There's a radical left Marxist, communist, fascist.
I don't know why you just pick one. Isn't one enough? Apparently
stupid.
not. It's just so dumb. But let's get into it because that was Donald Trump, of course, spewing labels, just just throwing anything out there. Let me throw the next thing out there. But he's not the only one, of course, throwing these labels and meaningless buzzwords around. Kamala Harris, or her running mate for that matter, according to an analysis by Media Matters for America, Fox News and Fox Business are the leaders. They falsely linked Vice President Kamala Harris, Governor Tim Walz, their campaign or their policies to socialism, communism, Marxism, at least 466 times since July 23rd. That's the day after Harris became the Democratic Party's presumptive nominee. So there you have it, Fox. Fox Business parroted the narrative on 49 of the 50 days reviewed by Media Matters. So they were relentless. Let's watch just a few of those baseless attacks.
If you're excited by the daily adventure of hyperinflation, vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. These two economically, frankly, illiterate radicals with a penchant for literal communism are promising to drive our economy right off the cliff.
We can't afford Kamala Harris. She's a dangerous Marxist who wants to turn America into San Francisco.
Fidel Castro came in. The reason he took over power was he convinced all the business sector in Cuba that he was an anti-communist, that he was pro-capitalism. The Sandinistas did the same thing before they got into power. Now, I know there's not going to be a revolution here. We're going to have an election. But could it be the dark side that all this talk is just talk and she wants to go really far to the left, even further than Biden has gone?
Do you believe that the Communist Party has been grooming Tim Walz?
That voice, it's just a voice. I just can't with her. I know all the networks, the cables, they do this. They get on a conference call in the morning, they set the agenda for the day, and the good ones carry it all the way through prime. What I've often said, as devious as they are, nobody does this better than Fox. Fox News, Fox Business, the Fox Enterprise, that wing of the company. I mean, they are sick and good with it. Cenk, you first weigh in on this, and if it grabs hold, I think they're good at planting these seeds, and then they do flower, they grow.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things in this story. First, Trump calling her Marxist, communist, fascist. Hard to be all three of those things. So communists are in favor of taking away, for a simplistic way of looking at it, is all private property. So sorry, but you don't get to have private property. Fascists believe in, so you certainly couldn't have a company or a corporation. There are no corporations in communism. Fascism is when corporations take over the government. How could they take over the government if they don't exist? Okay, look guys, I'm simplifying, but please look up what fascist and communist and Marxist mean. It's not anything at all what the Republicans say. They're being absurd. First of all, again, fascist is super right-wing, dictatorial takeover by usually combined with business interests. Like, for example, if you took the richest person in the country and said, "Oh, if you give me money to the party, you could just take over the whole government and do like an audit and destroy some of it that you want, keep the other parts, and maybe have subsidies go to you." Oh, right, that's what Trump promised Elon Musk. See, that's what fascism might look like. And by the way, if you were going to be honest about I'm not going to get into Kamala Harris or anything like that. In terms of the Democratic Party, the corporate Democratic Party, they're not close to fascist or communist. But which one are they closer to? Well, they take tons of money from corporations and then do what corporations want. They're certainly closer to that than they are to communism. Look, and that's to Sharon's point. They've got all these people who have no idea what communism is. And tens of millions of people in this country, maybe even 100 million, because a third of the country is locked in for these guys. And they believe every talking point. They think, oh, if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz come in, that's it. There goes my car. They're going to take my toaster. My house is gone. Thank God I got my gun. I'm not going to let them do that. They're going to take. There's not going to be a single company left in America. That is so insane. That is so ludicrous. That's so far from true. But yet tens of millions of people believe it. It's so sad. And you know how many times, and how do they believe it? Why do they believe it? Because of Fox and other right-wing media. So Sharon gave you some of the numbers, like 466 times they mentioned it in 50 days. Of the 50 days that Harris has been the candidate, 49 of them, Fox did a segment about how she was a communist or Marxist or socialist. Bartiromo has mentioned it 63 times on her show. Her and her guests, 63 times. Hannity, 49 times. So averaging either one or more than one reference to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz being communist, socialist, or Marxist. Absurd, ridiculous. That's exactly what propaganda looks like.
You know, first and foremost, I gotta point out how Donald Trump truly knows nothing but swindle. That is all he knows. He doesn't know anything. He's never known anything. But like he just so confidently says the most stupid bull you've ever heard in your life because all he does is swindle. He thinks everybody's a sucker. He really thinks everybody's a mark, and he genuinely believes that he just should be able to do whatever he wants. And he complains anytime he gets the slightest amount of pushback. So that's just, you know, how he could mix socialism and communism and fascism together because all he knows is swindles because he's an idiot, which we all know. But also, you know, the fact that Fox News is always talking about communism goes to show how old their general audience is. Not just, you know, and how little of a grip they have on the future. I mean, this country is going to stay capitalist. That's not going to change. But I say this because how many people were, I mean, I wasn't even alive for the Red Scare. I was born in 1992. Like, this outdates my life. You know what I'm saying? Like, who is this really scaring other than people in their 70s and 80s who remember all of these things? And then on top of that, I mean, Kamala Harris is clearly not a socialist. She's clearly not a Marxist. She's a capitalist. And she's further to the right than Joe Biden on some of her tax policies. With the capital gain, she wants to put it up to the 28%. Joe Biden wanted that at, I think, 39.6 or 39.8% or something like that. She's very pro-business. In fact, so much so that Stuart Varney and Neil Cavuto and maybe a couple of other people were like, hey, her $50,000 for small business tax loan, that's a pretty good idea. But it's just the same old playbook. It still works, but I have a question. Do you think that there's any need for them to change up this playbook at all in terms of communism, or do you think it's just gonna kind of keep on working as we go forward?
Well, so it's a good question, Jackson. A couple of things about that. First, for some niche categories in America, it works like a charm. So Cuban Americans in Miami, you just say someone's a communist, that's it, they vote against them. They don't need to hear anything else. They don't need to see if it's true. They don't even need to remember what communism is. It doesn't matter. They're going to vote against them, okay? So it works like a charm in that community. In terms of older Americans, to Jackson's point, do you know, this is one of my favorite facts, this is the second time I'm saying it this week, that the Republicans have won one national election, presidential election, since the fall of the Berlin Wall. They won in terms of getting into office. But popular vote only won once since the fall of the Berlin Wall. They're a minority party in this country. They keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. That's why they're in a panic. That's why when they lose an election, they're like, well, maybe we should resort to violence and bum rush the Capitol because it doesn't look like we could ever win again. But for the older voters that vote for Republicans, and Trump today was talking about, oh, older voters, I love you, right? Because older voters remember the Red Scare. They're used to voting for Republicans. They used to vote for Reagan and George H.W. Bush, et cetera, back when Republicans used to win popular votes. So you just say communist triggers them. They're like, oh no, oh Stalin, oh Fidel Castro, that's it, I vote for Republicans. The reality is, like I said earlier, the Democratic Party is more corporatist than it is capitalist. Capitalist is at least in favor of free markets. The Democratic Party is more right-wing than capitalism, dangerously right-wing because they're corporatists that support corporate rule. Same with corporate Republicans. Same with Donald Trump, who says, "Oh, if you're a corporate donor of mine, well, I'll give you everything. I changed my mind on electric vehicles because Elon Musk gave me a strong endorsement, means tens of millions of dollars." And so he changed his mind on TikTok because Jeff Yazd, the owner of TikTok, gave him money, one of the owners, etc. So they're all corporatists. None of them are even capitalists, let alone socialists, let alone Marxist and communist. So I talked a lot about this on Lex Friedman's podcast. You can check that out for a much fuller conversation about that issue. And then finally, just real quick on what Jackson was saying in terms of the numbers. No, Biden and Harris both want to move the corporate tax rate theoretically to 28%, but they're not going to do it. They have no interest in doing it. It's just a talking point. Biden said it. He didn't do a thing to get it done. But the thing you were thinking of, Jackson, is on the capital gains rate. Biden is theoretically in favor of pushing it past 40, and Kamala Harris says 28. But did Biden push it past 40? He didn't push it at all. It's still exactly where it was before. So it's all a bunch of lies just to serve the donors, both for the Democrats and Republicans. But the donors are not communists. The donors are the most corporatist people on the whole planet. And you know what the tax rate is for corporations under communism? 0, because there are no corporations under communism. Please.
We'll move on, but I just want to say my answer to your question, Jackson, do they need to change strategy, would go something like this. Hell yeah, because people die. People die eventually. And people who don't remember the Red Scare and this, so if they're both lying, like Cenk said, right? Each party has lies attached to it. Why not, if you're predisposed to that kind of game, why not paint a prettier picture than, I don't know, and invite some people in, even if you don't like them, just for survival's sake, and then do whatever you want, which is what both parties end up doing. That part to me is just, maybe they'll pivot next time as more people die off. I don't know.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.